Well, hello everyone. Um, Again, I just want to apologize for the link mix-up. I copied and pasted poorly and linked two things together in there. So I appreciate everyone working with me, and you guys figured that out. And I'll make sure all the links going out going forward are correct. So thank you for having patience with me. But in an interest of everyone's time, I will kick this off right away. Um, so first off, I just want to thank all of you for taking your personal time to join tonight, and thank you for your patience. This is the first time we're doing something like this at OPI. I don't think any agency has done something like this before in Montana, so this is new. So I appreciate everyone's patience, and I appreciate everyone working with us, and I think it's really exciting because it gives everyone an opportunity, hopefully, to give some input, talk about things, try to be creative. And then hopefully have some really great ideas that we can pass on to the legislature to make sure that a lot of people's voices are heard and they get a lot of good information. So I'm just going to start this off really quickly with just a very simple slideshow and mostly housekeeping items. Okay. So this is our first a small breakout group. I just had the other first one, which is the special needs and student programs, right before jumping on with you guys. Unlike our first giant one where we had over 100 people on, please feel free to unmute yourself, ask questions at any time. I don't want to do a lot of talking. I just want to kick this off, and then I want to hear from you guys. I want it to be a great discussion. And just a reminder, those are our other small groups. So like I said, we just had our very first small group just an hour ago, and you guys are our second one. So I'm very excited to actually get to know you guys and hear you guys. So one of the things in the email I sent around was a share drive. So this is for accessing and any kind of information that you guys want to share. This was a recommendation from someone else in a group. They thought it'd be a great idea for you guys to be able to communicate directly. So one of the first things is group members. So unless anyone has any reason, and please tell me and or just shoot me a private note. I would like to share everyone's contact information with each other, just their email addresses, so their names and email addresses in the group member document, so that you guys can contact each other directly if there's something like, oh man, I really shared something with that person, I want to talk to them more about it offline. I just want you guys to be able to reach out to each other. So unless someone has reservations, I'd like to share the names and email addresses with your fellow small group members. The other document is a resources link. So in there, I put links of some of the documents that I've emailed around previously, but then I've also started putting in documents that are specifically geared towards your group's topic. So for you guys, I have some more of like the current teacher retention or recruitment program information in that document. If you have any issues accessing this, please let me know. Or if you don't want to access it, but you still want the information from there, I can email it to you directly. So just gotta let me know. And then today, what are our goals? So over the next couple meetings, what I really want to do is kind of identify issues. And obviously, we know there's a teacher shortage in Montana, but I want to kind of get down to the nitty gritty of what you guys see in the community as the biggest hurdles. And then where should we look for solutions? We can start working out solutions today. And at the end of this, we're going to prepare a white paper for the legislature with your ideas kind of consolidated down. And a lot of this will like interact with other groups. We talked about teacher retention in the special needs small group that we just had. And the biggest thing I want to focus on is thinking outside the box. So I think a lot of times we get very hung up on how the education system, how the funding system works right now. But we don't have to think in those terms. There's states that do different things. There's ways that Montana can lead. Montana is leading in a number of ways. But there's other ways that we can take the lead too. So don't be afraid to think out of the box, big or small. And also you don't have to stay on the group's topic. Like I said, we talked about teacher retention in the last group. A lot of this stuff really interacts. So don't be scared of going outside the topic because all of it loops together. And then as questions pop up, I'll go over this again at the end of what more information I could provide you guys. If there's any questions, I'm sure there's questions I won't be able to answer. So I'll make sure I can get the right answer for you. And then just a reminder, our next group meeting is Monday, June 24th at 7 p.m. And I will make sure to send around the proper email or link. And just to show you guys, can you see my screen still? Hopefully. So this is your group document. So I'll put everyone's names, and some people already started putting it in. And you don't have to share your phone number or anything. I was just going to put the emails and names to begin with, but you can add more information for people to reach out to if you'd like. And then the other thing is the resource links. Like I said, so these top couple to number 8 are things I emailed around to everyone else. These next 3 is just different information regarding the Teach Act here in Montana. But I want to keep building this out. I want you guys to put in the information in here. Like I said, I think other states are a great way to get inspiration, but we shouldn't stop there. So I will stop my screen share because I would like us to get over to the discussion part. And like I said, I want to do a lot less talking. I want to do a lot of listening. I am recording this meeting. I will also be taking notes. So again, if you guys want more information on specific things or anything like that, I can research it, look it up, prepare it for next time, email it around. But I really want you guys to take the lead. And like I said, one of the things that we need to start talking about are the issues we're seeing. So obviously we have a teacher shortage here in Montana, but I would love for you guys to share some of the hurdles or some of the struggles that you guys are seeing in your community. And also, I guess I almost forgot. I would love for everyone, and you don't have to, but I would love for everyone to go around and just quickly introduce yourself, just your name. And if you want to share why you were a part of this group. A lot of you, I put you in this group because you mentioned teacher pay, teacher recruitment, stuff like that in your comments when you applied. So that's how you got part of this group. But if you'd like to share just a quick line about yourself and your name, that would be great. And I am going to call out Laura Chris to start because you're in the top left corner of my screen. So, and then people, please jump in and just quickly introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Laura Christ. I live in Great Falls, Montana, and I'm a parent. I care about our students and teachers. I have 4 kids, high school to elementary age, so every level. I actually just finished graduate school at University of Montana as well. And I am interested in this group as just an advocate for public education.
Who's next? Don't be shy.
I'm Lisa Werner. I used to teach German at Bozeman High School, and I no longer teach German because I live outside of Lewistown, and I'm here because I'm concerned about the teacher shortage and not being able to support our teachers when they want to come to Montana and teach.
I'm Samantha Humphrey. I'm a business teacher at Helena High School. I decided to join this group because I am also interested in teacher retention and pay, and the fact that we're burdening our taxpayers so much that levies across the state didn't pass because people can't pay anymore. And so in my school, we're losing, or in my district, we're losing like 52 teachers. And so, that's a pretty heartbreaking thing for kids and for people who wanted to make this a career. So that's why I'm here.
Hi, oops, sorry. My name is Lisa Fant. I am a special education teacher at Flathead High School in Kalispell, and I became interested in joining this group as I am part of a committee with my district as on the insurance committee, and we're finding out that new teachers, especially new teachers that have a family, they're losing money when they have to pay out for insurance for their family members on top of the low teacher pay. And so that's why I'm here.
I'll jump in. I'm Bob Stevenson. I'm in Livingston, Montana. I've been a high school math teacher, high school principal, intermediate school principal, director of special education. And, over the span of my 20-year administrative experience, I've seen us go in Livingston from having 20, 30 applicants for positions to not being able to attract one applicant for given positions throughout the district. So, there are definitely some shifts in public education. I am a strong advocate that the health of our communities is directly tied back to the health of our public schools, and the opportunities that every one of the students that we serve have to be contributing members of our community. So, I see that we're kind of in crisis right now, and I want to be part of a group to, think outside the box, like Katie says, and try to come up with, some solutions to really, to get people back into this system to preserve, a necessary institution in our communities.
Will Dickerson. I'm a principal at Morningstar Elementary, former high school teacher at Bozeman High School, special ed coordinator, and a parent. And just would like to be in any room where we're advocating for teachers to get paid what they deserve for the work they do, and enough to live in the communities they live in, which is not currently happening.
I'm Michelle Swinford. I'm a English teacher at Bozeman High School. Bozeman is well represented in this group. I'm also part of our BEA Bozeman Education Association. I'm a secretary of that, and learn with our monthly meetings with our administration just how the teacher shortage is impacting Bozeman. Just like Bob said with Livingston, we used to have hundreds of applications for each position, and now we have not that at all. Again, positions going unfilled. The cost of living in Bozeman is just astronomical. And I think sometimes our legislators don't live in Bozeman, and they have a house that's paid for, and they don't quite understand when you hire someone at $45,000, which sounds great, but the average cost of the house is $750,000 here in Bozeman. That just doesn't work. And so we're in dire straits.
Hello, Miles. Oh, go ahead.
I'm Jen Johnson. I work at Creston outside of Kalispell. And I want to be a part of solutions, and it's just really hard to know that our newest teacher just got hired and she could work at Subway as a manager and get more at the end of the year than working as a first-year teacher at a small school in Montana. So it's hard to recruit and retain our teachers, obviously. Part of the solution.
I'm Miles McGeehan. I'm a science teacher and department leader for the science department at Bozeman High School. I've been teaching for over 20 years. I'm a single parent of 2 daughters, and due to the economic situation with rising taxes, I bought my home here 12 years ago. I've taken on 3 jobs, driving limousines on the weekends in the wintertime to take people from the airport to Big Sky. I work as a fly fishing guide in the summer. I've been doing that for 25 years. And it's challenging for me as a seasoned educator to understand that I'm still living month to month. I've taken on a lot of student teachers from Montana State University, and my last student teacher, we tried to push them into applying for an open position we had, and they just flat out said, no, I can't afford to live here. I've seen a lot of our young colleagues work for 2 or 3 years, and then they're superstars, and they're quitting the profession and moving elsewhere for more money, whether it's for teaching positions or for positions elsewhere in the private. I'm really fearful about what the quality of education for my kids is going to be with the loss of recruitment and retention. And as others have mentioned, we used to receive dozens upon dozens of applications. As the department leader for the last few years, it's dwindling down to maybe 3 or 4 applications for an open position. And many of them aren't even certified or qualified. So it's getting very tough.
Anyone else want to introduce themselves? I won't force you to say hi, but you're welcome to.
Hi, I'm Teresa Marchant. I am a school librarian at Lockwood School. So I represent the smaller schools, but not small schools. So what we're seeing a lot of, like I echo a lot of your comments, but even on our district, we will have people, they accept the position and then they receive a better offer and leave our district. Just because the nature of the game, they want more money, want more benefits, which I can totally get, but maybe something more equitable across the board, regardless of your district. So I'm here to listen and learn and hopefully offer some solutions and brainstorming. Thanks.
I'm Cami Hildebrand. Oh. I'm Cami Hildebrand, school psychologist at Florence School K-12. I think just the same as what a lot of people are saying, seeing the problems, especially hitting special ed, where nobody wants to go into special ed anymore, and the students that need the most help, can't afford the insurance with the salary, can't afford to live, and really worried about attracting quality educators, because if we're not paid like professionals, we're not going to be able to get the best teachers out there to continue to sustain education in Montana.
I'm Jen Metler. I'm from Baker Schools, way east. We're a small Class B school. I am the business manager for the school district. And I kind of wanted to get on here just for the fact of the funding mechanism in Montana. There's something that's definitely a little askew. I'm not going to say it's completely wrong, but there's obviously something that needs to kind of happen. I got on the teacher retention portion of it, and because in Eastern Montana, just like you guys are having problems out there, our cost of living is just as bad out here, and we're very isolated. It takes a certain person to come out east and teach to a small school, and they've got to like where they go and love the kids. And we are starting to see that teacher shortage now too. We were living in this bubble out here where we didn't really have that for a while, and now we are starting to see, just like everybody else, where we are having a hard time getting them to come out east. We're about 12 miles from the North Dakota border, so we compete with a lot of different states where we're at. So it'll be just interesting to see this next legislative session and just kind of how it goes. And I guess whatever we can do to help the situation that everybody is in.
Last call to say hello.
Hi, I'm Colleen Drury, and I'm also a business manager. I'm in Scobie, out in the middle of nowhere. I'm sorry I'm joining late. I was out trying to round up horses that decided to escape. It's seeding season for us here. So I kind of wrote, I agree with Jen. We're in the middle of nowhere, and trying to get anybody to come to Scobie, Montana is always a challenge. We have a lot of really small schools out here in our corner of the state. So it'd be nice to figure out a way maybe to consolidate resources. I don't know. There's got to be a way to be able to get some of these teachers to fill in different positions. I don't know. There's got to be a way to do it and make it worth their time, worth their money. There's the small pot, and trying to explain that to our teachers that the pot is small and it covers a lot of things, not just salaries, is a challenge on our end as the business managers. So I hope that I can come up with some maybe innovative ways to spend the money and listen to you guys that are the teachers and see what you really want, from someone that's not on the negotiating from Scobie Schools side. So yeah.
Well, thank you everyone again for joining, and I'm glad we got to say a quick little hellos. Hopefully we'll get to know each other really well over the next couple months. But I heard us start to get into kind of some of those topics, and we all know, more funding would be better. To be able to pay teachers more, it would be better. But how do we get there? Is there specific programs we think are working well? Are there specific ways we can improve just programs that are just started? So for instance, the teacher residency program was only initiated in 2021, and it's still really tiny. Is that something that we think would continue to benefit if it was expanded and more people were recruited into being a part of that program? And then also, is there different ways that we could help recruit, say, for instance, special ed teachers, more specialized teachers in some areas that are obviously a big need, and special ed is on my mind because of the last meeting. But I would really like to hear more about some of the biggest hurdles you guys are hearing. And I think it's great that we have some more of the bigger schools, or I'd say more urban in Montana terms, with like Bozeman and the Billings area. But then also I think it's a great that we have representation from across the state in the more of the rural areas. And you don't have to raise your hand to speak. You can just go ahead and speak. I think this is a small enough group that we can just cut me off. I don't want to hear myself talk. I want to hear you guys talk.
So something that I have a particular interest in is in community building. And a lot of the things that I'm hearing, please correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not a teacher. I'm just a parent. But across the state of Montana, we're having issues with cost of living. We're having issues with just being able to cover basic needs, which I know is not only just in Montana, but also a national thing. But it's incredibly difficult to try to pass levies in a community that's also running multiple other levies. I know that there's issues trying to even be able to, I spent last summer talking to a lot of city mayors and managers, and talking with them, they weren't able to get new police teachers, policemen or firefighters or different things because of issues of housing. There's lack of housing across our state. There's like affordable housing. So you can find someone who wants to live in your community, who wants to be a teacher, wants to be a police officer or a firefighter or a public servant. And we simply don't have the funds to be able to pay them for them to be able to live in our community. So my outside of the box thought on some of this, since I believe that education is the heart of our community and it builds the type of communities that we have, how can education lead and work with local government leaders in being able to find solutions with our state to improve housing, whether there's incentive programs that we can work with through housing groups, you know, on the state level, on the city level, what we can do for either like a citywide insurance that would include public servants. I know that they had a school insurance, something that was happening this last legislative session, and that there's some legal issues that we're kind of working through to see what we can use and how that's working. I'd be interested in an update for that. I think something else that I hear about from my children's teachers is just even improving teacher autonomy. I would love to see a community support what kind of teachers we want to have and how we can protect our teachers' ability to be able to be experts in their field without people who are not experts in their field telling them how to do their job. Like, nobody goes to their doctor and tells the doctor how they're supposed to do their job, you know, but I recognize we have to have accreditation standards and all of that. I don't think any teachers are like trying to pass the buck on that, but how do we improve autonomy? How do we improve access to housing for our teachers? And how do we improve community-wide like levies and different things like that? Because we're all strapped for money. Those are some of the things that I've been thinking about. I would love to hear your thoughts and ideas.
I just want to jump in, Laura. I mean, the autonomy question, I'm sure there's a group for that. Most of the teachers I know in this room are amazing teachers who have a lot of autonomy and can't afford their rent. So I don't know, like I always get nervous when I hear, it seems like there are these incentives to like, I don't know, maybe we just house teachers in government housing. Why pay them the same amount that a real estate agent is making in town? It's a real struggle for me. And I don't know how some of these other guys feel. And this is, I realize, sort of a Bozeman, Livingston, perspective, but I'm hearing too that similar challenges in Baker. I mean, if you can't afford to feed your children and house them, then you're going to do a different job, no matter how passionate you are about the work you do. So I don't know how you skirt around the pay issue. I don't know if you've seen the recent charts on the inflationary, like what it costs to live in America, much less Montana and much less Bozeman, Montana, compared to teacher salaries. It ain't happening. Like you're just not going to recruit young people to do that job for any more than maybe 2 years. They get tired and they realize that their hopes and dreams don't feed you, and they certainly don't allow you to have a home. So
I totally agree, Will, but shouldn't the state, like, where's the state's responsibility or our local government's responsibility in making sure that we have access to good education? I mean, it's in our state constitution that we have quality education. So what is the state's role? Is it just going to be cost of living for teachers, which I agree is really important again, and people should be able to spend their money however they want, but there's no adjustment, if that makes sense, within the funding formula for a Bozeman versus a Great Falls versus a Scobie, even though all of Montana's housing is expensive. I mean, we've seen huge jumps even in Great Falls, but
you lost me a little bit there. So are you asking like what the funding formulas should change to be, or are you asking whether or not there can be a change in the funding formulas? I understand that the state needs to do more than just ensure that budgets of school districts can support their staff members, but I don't think that's a just. I think that's a very important thing they need to be able to do. They do lots. I'm on the ELA standards writing committee. We write standards. We do a lot to ensure that students are educated. My concern for most of the people in this room is how they can continue to engage in that work and live. And I do think that there are ways that the state can do that. I think that the funding formulas are outdated, that they were adjusted based on trying to make things equitable. And in some ways they do, but in trying to make things equitable, they are not flexible, and they do not allow for the kind of budgeting that not just large districts, but that districts across the state, including districts in very small communities with very, very, very large houses, just can't fund anymore.
I totally agree. Do you think that, I mean, they have their small inflationary thing that doesn't even go above 3% within the funding formula, but we don't have even a funding mechanism to be able to dynamically address inflation that's different across different parts of the state. Instead, it's just based on A and B. It's just based on IDEA. I mean, we don't have a mechanism that keeps up with the cost of living. And should that just be an education thing, or should we be having a bigger conversation within the community, within the state, on how we're going to do this? You know, we almost need a different revenue source, and I hate to say that, but like, it's not, obviously it's not working, but every public job that has to ask for money through tax increases is struggling being able to have anybody work for them. And it's not a dignified way to live.
Laura, I hear you. And it's what other profession has to sue the state in order to get them into action? And every time we've sued the state because they're not upholding the Constitution of funding education adequately, then they give us a pittance. My second point is, what other institution has to go to the taxpayers and ask for just a minimum amount of funding? Case in point, look at the number of AA schools who are in the red and their tax levies failed this year. That's just showing that there's a couple of things. There's a voter apathy, there's a disrespect for teachers, and we're tired of being taxed out the wazoo. So something definitely needs to change, and it's a total overhaul.
I think it's important that we talk big picture and little picture too. So big picture, total funding overhaul, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the things that we want to see in funding. I also think it's important with what Laura was talking about. We can put things forward to the legislature however you guys want, right? So putting those big picture things of completely recalibrating the funding formula, great. I think it's also great to have, if there was something, just to go off what Laura said about housing. Is there a way, and the housing problems are different in different areas, right? There's some areas that there's just straight up not housing. And then there's areas where there's housing, but no one can afford to live in the housing. So those are two different issues to address too. But I think it's important that we talk about both.
So
I think that
I worked and
go
lived
ahead, Miles.
in some places in Colorado where cost of living was expensive, and I know that Montana's in growing pains right now, but other people have solved this, have built the wheel, if you will, so to speak, before us, and we can borrow ideas and look at solutions that have worked in other communities. And I think, as Laura insinuated, like, we do need to have some type of housing mechanism that's going to support teachers. When I worked in Colorado, it also supported teachers, principals, fire, police, and nursing in expensive communities. One of the ways they did that was a deed restriction that did not penalize the developer. So when a new community was put in, they would identify one side of the street will sell at market price originally and equal to the other side of the street. So the developer still maintained their profit, but the one side of the street was specific to those public servants, and it was capped at like a 3%. So if you sold 5 years later, you were allowed only to sell at a 3% appreciation level, regardless if the market went up 20% or something in between. And you're only allowed to sell to those other public servants when you left. Now, it didn't solve the problem immediately, but it was providing a solution that was going to grow upon itself 20 years down the road, because that housing would be at a much lower plane, and principals, teachers, firemen, and so forth, buying 20 years later would be able to buy a nice house across from anybody else in the neighborhood and not feel like they were in a designated part of town or whatever. It was just intermingled in different communities. In addition, there was something called cost of living assistance for different school districts and zip codes, where the difference between base pay and whatever the median home value wasn't enough to attract teachers. I think Montana has the potential for bringing up everybody in the state with, I believe we're sitting on like a $760 million surplus right now, almost $1 billion. And the last legislature could have addressed it. Maybe this legislature could address how that money could be used to solve some of these tough problems. We're not in a bankrupt situation with money in the state. So I think it takes a portfolio of ideas, and I think everybody's ideas here are really important, and not one idea is going to win for one community. Thank you.
I'd just like to say that cost of living index, depending on where you are in Montana, is really critical as we move forward. We can't pretend that there's just one cost of living in Montana. It's ludicrous to think that will get us through the next years in any sane kind of way. And together with that, even the smaller communities, Lewistown isn't a big city, but we also have a housing shortage. So that combination somehow of addressing housing plus cost of living in a way that recognizes all of the situations that exist, or a majority of them, instead of maybe just thinking that it's a blanket situation throughout the state, I think would be a wise path to go.
And I would like to, if that's the case, if housing is a problem, we got lots of houses in Scobie, Montana, and nobody seems to want to just jump on the bandwagon and move out here. So there's a lot of jobs out in rural Montana that nobody seems to really want to take. So there's got to be a way to incentivize teachers to come our way. And I haven't quite figured that out, because the average age of my teachers now is almost 47, 48, almost 50 years old. So we've got 24 teachers, and we've got to figure out a way to replace them, but nobody wants to move to Scobie, Montana. So, and we pay really well. Our salary schedule is right up there with everybody else's. It's not like we're not paying, and we've got really good insurance, but maybe if all the AA schools would share some of their kids with teachers with us, that'd be pretty nice.
Well, Colleen, I just have a question to go off of what you asked, and maybe other people have things too. Do they maybe not see as many advancement opportunities in a smaller school? Do you think maybe incentivizing ways for them to further their degree, but still while in the community, do you think something like that would be beneficial? Or do you see that as a stumbling block?
not necessarily. We paid a master's plus 30 down to unlimited number of years. It's not like we're not going to pay for their positions. We did something completely stupid. Sorry, teachers, we did something completely stupid, but we actually put in our master agreement that teachers can actually make lane changes with just renewal units, OPIU renewal units. I mean, that's a huge way to make lane changes at this point. So you can move across the salary schedule as fast as you want to. If you want to do a master's, obviously you have to go to school for it, but I don't think necessarily when a house in Scobie costs $85,000 and our starting teacher salary is $35,000, as with just a BA, that's not a bad gig, I guess. I mean, $35,000 is a bad gig no matter where you look at it. It's just, compared to Bozeman, it's not bad.
Well, I think maybe for Scobie might be that a lot of teachers are in the same boat I have been in, and because I have my administrative endorsements and my education specialist degree, but I'm place bound. My husband is a fisheries biologist, and so we can't just pack up and move to a rural place, even though I could get an administrative position. But where would he work? What would he do? Because that's his career. So that might be some of what you're facing for, unless you can attract teachers that are a couple, and then they can both work through the school system. But, that might be one of the things that's happening. I don't know for sure, but I know that's my problem. And I know some of my colleagues that work in Helena are in the same boat. They're place bound. And so unless it's, within 60 miles of Helena, and even that's pushing it.
I'm in the same boat with my husband's job here in Kalispell. My two granddaughters are here. And so, yeah, I'm staying here, and but I do have my admin license as well, and a master's, and I've taught regular ed, I've taught special ed, but yeah, it's finding opportunities where I live. Sometimes it's challenging, especially with the pay. If I leave where I am, then I would lose money most likely.
Is it fair to say that, if we had a healthy applicant pool like we did 20 years ago, that, we're not having this conversation because people can make the professional choices of, I want to be a teacher in a rural community, and, or I want to, whatever, be in a AA school. We've certainly had teachers in Livingston who that was, they got on in Livingston, but, they wanted to be in a more rural community because that's how, that's where they grew up. That was their experience, what they wanted. But I think it's just testament to the how shallow the pool is right now, that, I mean, really across the board, it's the same conversation, whether you're Bozeman, Scobie, like there is no applicants. And so there is no filtering or matriculation of, people going back and forth between towns, or there's just no candidates. So no, I really appreciate too the direction of this conversation, that, certainly we can't look at it as just education in isolation, because we don't win friends that way. This is a problem. My wife is a nurse. She feels it. We've got friends that are police officers, and it's the public sector is kind of hurting right now, and we need to somehow in the conversation we need to pull together. I know that it's just it's hard to ask for more money right now. And I don't necessarily think that is always the solution. Just when I did my homework, all the homework that Katie sent out, and dissected my own district's budget to see, okay, where are we at and what does a base budget mean? One of the things that came to light for me is, we support our schools here. We've passed levies. We've, had new construction. We're pretty close to our max budget, our max over base budget, which is thank you community. But then I started, really dissecting what is the base budget. What does that mean? What does that entitle our students to? And you match that up with the accreditation standards, and it's not a high bar that we're funding. And then to be able to, you know, only go above that a certain percentage, you know, really, I think another talking point of this group might have to be, you know, what is BASE? I mean, BASE right now doesn't get our kids to college. It doesn't create multiple career pathways that, you know, is what our communities are striving for. And, you know, just trying to be more creative in providing more opportunities for our kids to be successful in their own communities and beyond that, you know, our educational system 10 years ago didn't provide. So the conversations are moving in a healthy direction, and it's almost like we know the direction we have to go. But our base is still woefully low in terms of, you know, that constitutional right that we talk about in terms of equity. You know, so I really think we have to examine what that base is, because I think that has to be a lot higher. The other thing that just I came across too is just when you have that huge discrepancy between your base and your max budget, it's really hard to talk about equity in education when we've got collective bargaining agreements that aren't the same across the state. You know, I would say at Livingston, we're pretty generous in terms of, you know, working conditions for our teachers, 2 prep periods at the high school. You know, our elementary teachers don't have duties. They have an hour duty-free lunch. You know, I think our pay scale is on the high end. I think it's really good. I think across the board in education, the salary matrices are ridiculous. And how we got into this trap, I don't know. You know, there's not a lot of professions where people with professional degrees where you actually can double your earnings over the course of a career. You know, somehow I think we have to squeeze that down. And yeah, I mean, if the entry level is 60,000 and you can have more career earnings over the span of a career, you know, maybe that'll incentivize people to, if they know they're coming out of college, do a 60,000 a year job with some decent working conditions, and, you know, our base is up to match what the base level of opportunities we deserve, our students deserve in the state of Montana. Now all of a sudden I think we're incentivizing, you know, kids going to MSU, U of M, Montana Western, you know, wherever, to become teachers and be part of something, you know, creative and big. But you know, yeah, it's a complex problem, but you know, I just don't think that base is anywhere close to what the expectations are when we're having this conversation.
I have a quick question. So when most of you are sitting down to bargain with your teacher or with your school districts and things like that, when you guys collectively get together in your unions, what are you guys seeing as the largest complaint out of your unions? And is it just pay? Is it your insurance? Is it your benefits? Is it your housing? Because this is, I mean, most of this is going to be teacher driven, especially when we're talking about retention. I think our biggest hurdle we always have in our school district, which we pay really well for where we're at. You know, we start teachers at over $40,000. They in order to get them there, we pay a lot, and we pay a lot for education. So I feel like our teachers are doing very well, but in the same token, in other areas, is it really across the board? Housing is the problem, insurance is the problem. I mean, we talk about base budget. Yeah, we're strapped. You're paid based on your students and your facility, and then it kind of goes down from there. And it's, you either want more money or you want your taxes to go up. You can't have both. Or you want your insurance to go up, but you want more pay. And that we just had that struggle with our teachers union. And, you know, you got to pick one or the other. And I feel like when we're talking about this, I feel it would be really good to really focus on a couple really big topics of, I think health insurance is a huge thing. Health insurance, if the state would allow us to put health insurance in a completely different fund out of your general fund, holy crap, that would alleviate a lot of things for these school systems, and we could offer insurance, and hopefully that will end up getting that way. We struggle with housing too out in Eastern Montana, but to me, ours is really insurance. I don't know if it's necessarily housing, but it's really insurance. And I don't know what you guys, everybody is so different when they go to sit and bargain at the table with their administrators and their trustees. And I don't know if that's what's happening everywhere else or if it's just us.
I would throw in there, Jen, just working conditions. I know it's not but I think post-COVID, you hear that, student behaviors are an issue.
Horrible.
So I think that, if I were to tell teachers, you can have $10,000 less, but you're going to love coming to work every day, they would trade that in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's worth noting that the conditions of the classroom have changed as well. And, so somehow that has to be a component of this conversation in terms, because we've had people come in too and say, yeah, I want to be a teacher. I'd love to be a teacher, but the last 2 years have been so hard for me. I can't do it. So it's not necessarily been, that was a higher priority over housing or insurance, or so yet another factor.
Yeah.
I know this is a little off topic, but I am curious because there's a lot of schools, there's a decent number of schools that are switching to a 4-day school week. Are any of you guys in a school that are a 4-day school week? Okay. And I know that has been brought into the conversation of teacher recruitment and retention as well, of having that 3-day weekend to either, I guess, not that I'm advocating for it, but to either have another job or have that more flexibility. I know there's a lot of implications for the community too of having a 4-day school week. What do you do with a kid on the 5th day if you're working? But I'd be curious just to hear about the 4-day school week and how that has played into any retention or recruitment or just in general.
For us in Scobie, we switched. This is our first year in the 4-day, but we were one of the very last schools in the eastern corner of the state that went 4 days. So we were the last, just about the last one. Yes, it's kind of helped with recruiting. It's still up for grabs whether it's been a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. I mean, the problem we run into in Scobie, and I'm sure you guys do across the board too, is the fact that, okay, so a teacher's here 4 days and then they have to go to a doctor Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because apparently doctors don't work on Fridays either. So you have to take one of these days off. We have 0 substitutes. The substitute pool is non-existent. So there's times that the teachers have got to consolidate, or you have to hope someone's got a prep period they can cover. We also went from an 8-period day to a 7-period day, which really didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. It was okay it was not a big deal to do that. But I think in our corner of the state, a 4-day week is not going to be something that recruits. In Bozeman, that may be something that's going to be a huge deal breaker. You might get more people because they're going to say, yeah, I can go skiing on Friday. But in Northeast Montana, when it's 40 below in the middle of the winter, I don't think, we just had to jump in and follow the game like everybody else was. So it hurt us more to not go than it helped.
And to add one thing about the 4-day school week, the University of Montana is actually doing a study on that. I think it's the University of Montana. Maybe it's Montana State. I apologize if I messed up the university, but they're actually looking into 4-day school week and stuff. So hopefully not too soon in the future. We will have just more information, just a broader, I guess, repercussions or positive outcomes from it.
Having worked in both, we actually live in Boulder and I commute to Helena, but I brought the 4-day school week to Boulder, to Jefferson High School, and was the person that tracked the data, and they still have the 4-day school week. And it was a fantastic thing for teachers to have time to do your work, because a 1-hour prep period to take care of 6 classes is not enough time. That's why part of the working conditions is that you work every night and every weekend to do your job properly. And Helena would love to do that, but we could never get enough across the board for people to, especially at the elementary level, because just like you said, people worry about, well, what happens to my kids, because you know, my daycare isn't there for me. I'm going to have to go pay for daycare someplace or whatever. So it's a big challenge, but it kind of ties in with what somebody else was saying about the workload. I mean, our daughter is a brand new teacher this year, and she was at the point of saying, I'm not sure I want to do this, Mom. And when she was deciding to go into education, I was like, I'm not sure you want to do this. It seems like it's a fantastic job because you're helping people, but you really do work so many more hours if you do your job the way you need to do your job. So the 4-day week for me, was a great benefit, but I got paid way more to come to Helena.
I used to work at a 4-day school, a small rural school, and what we noticed, the teachers, I mean, I use my Friday off to do my lesson plans and plan and prep without interruptions. So I did enjoy that, even though it was supposed to be my unpaid day off. But what we noticed is students' attendance increased because they had that Friday. Parents would schedule all their appointments on that Friday. So and this is a school that had no busing, no lunch. Students brought their own lunch. So there was a lot of things that the little school did not offer, where most school districts save money, transportation, in lunch, food service. But it did increase the attendance, where we had 4 days of academic setting, and field trips were made on Fridays. That way we had the 4 academic full days.
Well, apologize. I know I just went off topic with the 4-day school week, but that popped in my head when you guys were talking. So I know it's a hot topic in Montana right now.
Yeah, I think too, just to add to that, just being super cautious, we're not treating a symptom with a 4-day school week, because, a school's operated for eons on a 5-day school week. And again, just going back to that community element, I think that, schools do, I mean, we are the central part of the community. And I think there's really something to be said about, school being in session 5 days. And I do think that we have to do something different to make the work manageable for teachers in that span. But yeah, I know it's a great recruitment thing, because yeah, but again too, I want to be cautious too. Like, I just think of myself as a younger person, thinking, oh, maybe I'll have a family, maybe I'll get married. It'd be great to live in a teacher dormitory and, have an extra day during the week. I can go find another job. Like, that's again, being cautious of, what we're really pitching when we're pitching that. So, just a word of caution. I'm not saying that we should dismiss ideas but really just getting to the root of what really is the root of the problem. And, can we get back to that place where, I, as a young teacher, was really excited about the job, knowing full well what it entails. It's late, late nights and work on the weekends, but I love doing it. And, so anyway.
Yeah, I haven't heard many teachers say, man, I wish I had less time with students. And that'll really help them learn and us meet our goals. I understand why it's necessary and works in some communities, and I don't want to be negative about that, but I would be very cautious. I'm with Bob on this one. I feel like yeah, it feels like a symptom, maybe not the overall problem.
I think
You
something.
don't teach. Oh, so I'm sorry. I just want to say you don't teach less time with students because you have our mandatory requirements hour-wise. So to say that teachers are saying, well, I want less time with students, that's not why that isn't what's happening at all. And that's really a misrepresentation of the 4-day week. In fact, at Jefferson, kids come in and work with teachers that are there working and, that need extra help. So they actually provide even more time. So to say that it's coming across like we want less time with students. No, people don't go into teaching to not be with students.
I wasn't trying to insinuate that that's what the teachers who are doing it are doing. That's just what the sell sounds like, I think, is where I am with Bob. It's like, you'll work less, but there's no way you'll work less. That's my point. I know that teachers in 4-day districts do not work less. It may look different when the students are there, but that impacts the communities as well. And when we have students who don't have homes that are the most that, you know, where parents can't be home on that 5th day. I mean, there are just a lot of impacts to that. So did not mean to insinuate that any teachers who are working in 4-day districts are working less. I believe they're working as much or more. It just seems like a strange sell because I think that's true.
I'd have to say that for a very rural school district, that the 4-day school week does make sense as far as Friday activities are concerned and the amount of students who are involved in those. Every district has their ability to say that 5th day of the week is a work day and you must be in the building. And with that in mind, I think that it's not a bad thing depending on the community needs and the student needs. But just saying that you work 4 days and on the 5th day you can go just, you know, hit the slopes, that is the wrong message to send to new teachers.
So I'll jump in real quick. I'm using my personal days now to contract out for a 3rd job to try to bring in extra money for my household. And the student teacher I had a year ago received accolades from Montana State for the excellence and the nature of her amazing work in the classroom, and left and moved 10 hours away to get $25,000 more base pay salary. When you scan over base pay starts in Seattle or Denver or Salt Lake or anywhere nearby, the reason why we're all complaining about lack of teacher applications is because $40,000 is not a lot of money in the eyes of new entry teachers when they do a little job searching around. And so we have qualified people leaving, and we're having a problem with retention. I'd love to have a day to go skiing every Friday, but it's not going to fly in our community because as a father of 2 daughters, I would just be like, if anybody here, everybody has a job and nobody can afford extra daycare on top of the service industry that's struggling to get by in this community as is. So while I've worked in a 4-day week and I love it and I would advocate for it for my personal ability to go out hunting or fishing or something, but it's not it's great, I think, when you have a community where you have a lot of generational family members around who can serve as grandmothers and aunts and uncles and so forth for the children in the community, but it's difficult otherwise.
I think it's important to acknowledge too that even with a 4-day work week, we're still talking about teachers working on their off time. And that it's not just like, hey, we're so glad you're here to be able to do your job. But Friday, it's like you have a whole day you can prep, or a whole day you can do this. And I think we should be talking about ways that we can support teachers on their on time, and, you know, so that their off time can be used to be able to do things that are best serve them, whether that's working or whether that's hunting or fishing or skiing or something like that. But teachers take a lot of their work home. And if we move to a 4-day work week and that Friday is just looked at a time where you can get all of your prep done, I think that that's not necessarily supporting the teachers in the way that we could.
Something else that we really haven't mentioned is just the rising cost of college and tuition. And I think when you're looking at teacher recruitment and you're looking at what they're coming out of schools with student loan debt, and you're talking about a starting salary of anywhere from 35 to 45,000, like nobody can even afford to pay their student loans on top of the housing and the insurance and the rest of that. And so I know there's the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Act, but that takes 10 years. And so I think that's part of this too, is how can we make that college education more affordable so that we're recruiting more people to go into education and increasing that pool.
Yeah, I think it comes back to the real question of how are you going to attract young, intelligent, enthusiastic educators into the profession and support them with a house to live in and enough money to support themselves and their families. I think, you know, talking about the 4-day work week is kind of beside the point. We need to make it attractive and doable and sustainable. And if
Yeah.
Montana has the money to do it, then Montana needs to like buck up and get on board, or they're going to lose their school teachers or not get any more.
Yeah, apologies. Did not mean us to bring us down a wormhole of 4-day. It was been talked about, so I just wanted to ask since I had you all here. But I know, Teresa, you wanted to say something.
Well, I was just saying this conversation is so rich, and I was like trying to get in back on when we were talking about teacher housing, and it just kind of went everywhere from there. But as I see the massive layoffs in school districts right now, how horrible would that be that we set these teachers up for failure? Not only do they lose their job, they also lose their housing. So we need to be very, very careful on how we're proposing that to be done. Because if it's somehow tied to their job, and then they become jobless, they also then become homeless. And so we've now created an even bigger problem. So like, I think it's Miles, I think that's your first name. I'm trying to look, how you said, basically looking at teacher pay, I think that's the main issue we need to talk about. Yes, there's all these other little issues that feed into that problem as well. But if we maybe direct our attention on how do we do the base pay for our teachers, how do we increase that? I know my daughter-in-law just started, she graduated from Montana, but my son then went to law school, and so she followed him. And in Iowa, they just passed a statewide base pay. It had to be at least 45,000, I think is what it was. So it was across the board, did not matter what district you were in. That is what the base pay was. Now, I know we've done something similar in the last few years in the legislation about the Teach Act, but I'm not sure that that's really solving the problem, at least in our district. I don't think that the teachers actually received any more, or how that actually worked. So maybe it's something we need to look at closely. And then also when we talk about insurance, I know the last session, we also passed the statewide insurance pool. We have yet to see how that's going to look, but hopefully that will solve that insurance problem. And so then we can just maybe focus our efforts on raising the teacher pay. Thanks.
I think too, along those lines, Teresa, I think it's important to note for this group to note too, like we can't increase teacher pay at the expense of student opportunities. Like those things have to come together, because I think I've seen that in the past too often where, yeah, our teachers are gonna get a little bump, but there goes the art program at the high school. So, you know, the way our funding formula works, where 90% of your general fund, I mean, it's people business, 90% of your general fund is tied up into, you know, salaries and benefits, which, you know, you start raising that base pay, and then the only alternative districts have then is to start cutting programs and opportunities for students. So, you know, whatever incentive that we come up with or the state comes up with, it can't be at the expense of student opportunity, because that defeats the purpose too. So
Exactly. Thank you.
And I think it's also like, it's important to note that we all don't have to agree on one solution that fix everything. Like we can come up with multiple avenues, because the reality is like we can present whatever we want to the legislature is still going to implement what they want. So I think it is important for us to like, we don't all have to agree on one thing. We could come up with like, here's an issue we want to address, here's 5 prongs of the ways we would address it. And maybe the legislature doesn't take all of them into consideration, but wouldn't it be great if they took 2? So I think there's to use not the nicest analogy, but there's multiple ways to skin a cat, right? So there's multiple ways to change the budget formula. There's multiple ways we can look at the general fund, and there's multiple ways we could look at increasing the revenue that goes into the general fund, which is always something legislators like to ask too, is where are we going to get the money? Because we might have a surplus right now, and it might be easy to decide where we get the money this year or next year. But just I think one thing to look at is the sustainability, right? So if we talk about the cost of living adjustments, but also the sustainability of where that funding could come from. I think that's important to talk about as we continue with our meetings as well.
Catherine, I know I read it in the information that you sent out a month or so ago. Tell me about the lottery and education funding. I'm from Indiana. Indiana started their lottery by telling the taxpayers that the money was going to go toward funding education. 10 years later, not a dime toward education. Is that the same thing that happened here?
I don't want to speak out of turn. I see people shaking their head yes, but I don't want to say anything without being 100% sure.
Okay.
So would you mind if I just double checked on
That's
that
fine.
and then
It just seems to me like, let's go back to that. If we have a surplus, people are always going to spend money to get rich fast. So the lottery is always going to be there. Let's go back and put that money
actually
toward education.
it usually does well in economic downturns too. So
Yeah. I mean, and then the second thing, I think legislators and educators and people across the state need to understand is fair is not always equal, and they try to have an equal funding measure, and a lot of the tax money that is generated in Gallatin County doesn't stay in Gallatin County. It goes to other schools that don't generate the tax money. That's not fair. So if you think about a teacher needing to buy a mortgage, at least when we got our mortgage, they said 2.5 times what you make. If you're a starting teacher at 45, that means they need to find a house about 120 in Bozeman. There's not even apartments at that equivalency per month. And so we need to talk about what is a fair starting salary at particular markets when it comes to housing. Someone asked, is it pay, is it housing, or is it insurance that we want? In our last 4 years of bargaining, it's always pay because the other ones are incorporated in it. If we have a higher pay, then we can pay higher premiums on our insurance, and then we can buy that house. So it's always that salary because the other ones are combined into it.
And if it makes you feel any better, this the discussion of where the money's coming from and all the funding, it's something that's discussed in every state. So we are struggling with that along with any state. So that should, I don't know, in some way make us feel a little bit better that this is not a struggle we're looking at alone. It is across the board. I've lived in a few states and I understand what you're saying with that. But I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So technically we're over an hour at this point. I think you guys mentioned a lot of stuff. Like I said, I was taking notes and recording so I don't miss anything. One of the things I know I have lottery information of exactly where does that money go when it comes in, and I'll get the best breakdown I can for you. Are there any other things that you guys would be interested in seeing if I track down? And feel free to throw stuff in the share drive too, because it sounds like you guys have a lot more experience than I do, and you guys have differing experience. So if there's any documents or research or articles, throw it into that share drive for all of us to share. But also, is there any other requests from you guys, like, hey, I would really like some stats on this or anything like that that I can look forward to for next time and prepare for you guys?
I know a long time ago, Wyoming, I always heard paid better, that, you start school at Wyoming, you don't have to take any school supplies, you're not passing those out, and that it was because they fund through their oil revenue. I've heard Montana uses some of our natural resources to help fund the schools, but I think I'd like to see more like, how much of the oil revenue does go into the Wyoming schools, and our revenues for like the trees and the different resources that we're using in Montana, are we getting any of that to benefit our schools?
Yes, you are. And I saw a breakdown of that just recently. I would pull it up, but I don't remember where it was. And I have like 30 screens up right now. But I do already have a breakdown of that, and I can include that in the share drive and email that around as well.
The other pot of money that was supposed to be spread around was the pot money.
That's what I was going to ask you. Yeah,
pot money.
Everyone's fighting over the pot money.
I'm trying to be, right politically correct. But when there's 17 dispensaries on Harrison Avenue, hello, that some of this money's got to be going somewhere.
Maybe it's not politically correct. We have high school, so we need the pot money.
No, I know there's battles right now in the legislature and with the governor and everyone of where that money is going. So I know that is a battle right now. But there's a lot of states like that who I would just call it a sin tax, right? Some of their sin tax money is tagged to go right to education. So I'll pull up the resources, kind of where our coal and oil money goes. And I know I already saw a breakdown, so I just have to pull that up. And then I can do a breakdown of where the pot money is going as well.
Well,
Katie,
and that's just an interesting question because lottery is a tax on the poor. We know it is. It hits the poor more than anybody else. They buy lottery tickets. Pot, however, is a tax on everyone. That is a way more, as well as alcohol. And so I would be very curious about that as well.
For sure.
Yeah, and Katie, just another thought I had, I guess. I think each of us have a feel of the challenges in our own communities, which is pretty dire. But I don't necessarily understand the scope of the problem as a whole across the state. I go on the OPI job vacancies pretty much every day just to kind of see, look for trends. But like, what statistics are we collecting on what the scope of the problem is, and in the moment, like, and I don't know how to measure this or what's being measured, but I just know that there are a ton of vacancies. I see postings and repostings for positions. How many positions do we have unfilled? How many emergency authorizations do we have for different certifications? Like, how deep into this hole are we right now?
Well, I know we have those numbers. I
Okay.
don't remember them off the top of my head, but I can definitely get them.
Fair.
Catherine,
Does
I
our-
think
Go ahead.
something I would love to see is not only kind of we have our revenue breakdown, with property taxes and income taxes, as well as our sin taxes and different things like that, but in comparison with a state that might do sales tax, which I know is also an extra tax on everybody, but kind of how that works. And then I would really love to see of their public servants, like I know that police and fire, their insurance is covered in a different state pool, and I'd like to compare that to the new insurance act that we have for the teachers to see differences or similarities in how that's being handled and funded. I'd just like to compare that to, again, from a community lens, compare our public servants and how we're funding them.
Is the scope of this group, can we also include, for instance, in the Bozeman Public School District, we are hurting for subs, as mentioned already, and paraprofessionals. And those paraprofessionals, the pay is low. Same with the subs. We've tried to increase it so that we could have, but those go hand in hand for those working conditions. If there's not enough paraprofessionals in those special ed classrooms and elsewhere, boy, that just really makes that working environment so much more dangerous and uncomfortable.
Yeah, the classified just generally. I mean, also our custodians. I just know everybody's hurting for hiring the people who really keep our kids warm and keep our buildings clean and sanitary. So yeah.
We're hiring our high school students to clean our classrooms now. And so we can't even attract custodians. The kid gets out 7th period and then goes and gets a broom and starts their hourly rate. But they could actually go a block away and work at Scrubby's car wash and get $4 more an hour than the custodians.
No, I think all this ties in, and like I said in the beginning, I don't think any topic is off topic. I think everyone had really good ideas. I think this was really productive today. And so many of the stuff interacts. Like I said, I was just doing the special education group, and one of the things we were talking about was teacher recruitment for that, and talking about how there's a higher turnover rate of special education teachers either leaving the profession or leaving special education. That's a higher rate than teachers leaving the profession in general. So all of this, all the groups, all the discussions, everything ends up tying together. And at the end of the day, it's all about finding the money too. So it all ties together. Okay. So I think I have a good amount of things to kind of get some more information for you guys for. If there's anything that pops up, shoot me a note, drop things into the share drive. And again, I really appreciate everyone joining on. Like I said, this is the first time we've done anything like this. So it is a little bit of growing pains, or we're still like figuring out our way. But I do think this is a great opportunity to bring together people from across the state. And I think it's great to get the perspectives of the challenges that different schools are facing, because we don't want to play whack-a-mole where we solve a solution for one type of school and then issue gets bigger for, if we solve something for a billing school, but then Scobie has a bigger problem because of what we did for Billings, that's a problem. So I think it's great to have that cross-representation. And like I said, I really appreciate you guys taking time out of your personal lives to join us and try to come up with some great solutions that hopefully, can be implemented one day. So to be respectful of everyone's time, I'll go ahead and wrap up the meeting, but don't hesitate to shoot me an email or anything like that. And again, really appreciate everyone joining and working with us on this. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Have a great night.